All right, a conversation came up about who is the number one boxer in the world right now. A lot of this really came about when Canelo had lost to Bivol, and the spot kind of became open because Canelo lost, and I don't think he really did much to regain his top spot with the Golovkin performance. Even if he had knocked Golovkin out, I wouldn't have said that, but certainly not if he did knock him out, even though I thought he won clearly, but I wasn't that impressed. I think, a lot of people, they boil it down to these three names: Terence Crawford, Alexander Usyk, Naoya Inoue. Now, let me just go through each guy's accomplishments. Terence Crawford, champion at 135, undisputed champion at 140, and champion at 147. 3 weight classes. Great stuff right there. Alexander Usyk, undisputed champion at cruiserweight. Obviously, he beat Joshua twice, so he's got the 3 belts now at heavyweight. And Inoue, champion at 108, champion at 115, champion at 118. I know a lot of people don't pay attention to the lower weight classes, and I'm going to be honest, I don't pay as much attention to the lower weight classes as I do to the higher ones. But I'm obviously well aware of Inouye's power and skill set and accomplishments. So it brings up a good question. When Inoue fought Donaire and knocked him out in the second round in the rematch, after the first fight was so great, and Donaire had gone and won another title, and come back and fought him in the rematch, I saw Ring Magazine say that Inoue was the number 1 fighter in the world. I don't agree with that. I think it's between Crawford and Usyk. Now, the reason why I don't agree with that with Inoue is because pound for pound is primarily about resume. But when you have these 3 guys who are all so similar in resume, I like to evaluate the skill set as well. And for me, I think Crawford has more dimensions to his game. I think Crawford could fight better versus more different styles. I think he has the better footwork. I think he has the better timing. I think the ability to go orthodox and southpaw gives him a big edge. And to me, I'm not even sure Inoue has a better resume than Crawford, because to me, maybe Donaire's better than Porter, but in that first fight, Inoue, he kind of struggled with him. And I know he won the fight clearly, but it was like a tight fight, up until the later rounds, where Inoue really hurt him, broke him down, and almost stopped him. But to me, that's like if Terence Crawford fought Manny Pacquiao and struggled with him. And to me, if he fought Manny Pacquiao, he would have destroyed Manny Pacquiao, Terence Crawford. I know I'm projecting a little bit, but, I think that that's a reasonable assumption. Now we get to Usyk. Usyk undisputed at cruiser. Now, Usyk's run at undisputed was better than Crawford's run at 140, in terms of the opponents. But you can't discredit Crawford for fighting who's the best people when he got into the weight class. When Crawford got into 140, Danny Garcia wasn't there anymore. Amir Khan wasn't there anymore. Lucas Matisse wasn't there anymore. I'm trying to think who else was there. A lot of those guys weren't there anymore. Maidana, Bradley, Devin Alexander, they had moved up years earlier. So when he moved up to 140, he fought Thomas Delorme for a vacant title, beat him. Then he beat Victor Postal of Gary Goodwin. He beat him. And then he beat Julius Ndongo for 2 titles. Now, Julius Ndongo, I know people don't consider the greatest fighter in the world, especially for someone who had 2 titles. But Ndongo did go into 2 people's backyard and win the title. He knocked out the Russian guy. I forgot how you pronounce his name. It's like Kolovsky. I don't remember how you pronounce it. I'm not trying to disrespect him. I just don't remember it. And he beat Ricky Burns. I understand, paper champion, but he did beat him in the UK. That was a nice win. And Crawford destroyed him. I think Crawford has never been in a close fight, whereas you have people like Usyk who, versus Bellew, there were moments where it was close. And I think versus Breda, it was kind of closer. I think that Usyk can definitely be argued as the number 1 guy, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. But for me, I'm going Terence Crawford, because Crawford, when he fought Porter, he stopped him. When Usyk fought Joshua, who I think is probably similar level to Porter, maybe a little bit worse, he couldn't stop him. Now, I understand I'm picking hairs here, because also you could say Joshua, he's a much bigger man than Usyk, whereas Porter and Crawford, even though Crawford's moving up, the size difference isn't as apparent. So, I don't know. It's really tight. For me, I think Terence Crawford is the best fighter in boxing today, and people compare him to Canelo. Now, he hasn't had the opportunity to fight as many high-level opponents as Canelo. No question about that. But they're both undisputed, and Crawford became undisputed first. Crawford beating Delorme Postal and Ndongo versus Canelo beating Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, and Caleb Plant. I think it's similar. I think Canelo's is probably a little bit better, but not much better. But the real difference with me and him and Canelo is Canelo's been in all these close fights. And Terence Crawford has never been in a close fight. And neither is Usyk. And when I say close fight, I don't mean the fight was competitive at one point in the fight. I mean, when the fight ends, here's a debate who won it. Obviously, he has the loss to Mayweather, Canelo. Okay, that was so long ago. Who cares? Lara, you basically say the same thing. The Triple G fights were razor tight, both of them. And the fight, with Bivol obviously is a loss. I know it's at light heavyweight, but still. Terence Crawford's never been in a close fight. And Terence Crawford's never failed a drug test. So you get with Crawford, no close fights, no failed drug tests, has stopped every single opponent since 2016, and for my money, has the better skill set than Canelo and Usyk. When you compare them, Crawford has the best timing, Crawford has the best speed, Crawford has the best distance control, I think better than them. I think his ability to switch from right-hand to left-handed, orthodox to southpaw, he's like Mickey Mantle of boxing, the best switch hitter in the history of baseball, for people that don't know that. And yeah, his stamina obviously blows Canelo's out of the water. Now, those guys, Usyk and Canelo, I think they're better than Crawford defensively. No doubt about it. And I think their chin is probably a little bit better as well. But for me, Terence Crawford's the number one fighter in the world. And I've got to give Max Kellerman credit, because he said this all along, that Terence Crawford was the best fighter in the world. And he was right. And I said back then Triple G was the best back in 2017. Looking back, in hindsight, I was probably wrong. Then I said Lomachenko. Looking back, I was probably wrong. And then from the Canelo fight on, from when he beat Danny Jacobs on, I'm like, this guy's the best in the world. Really, when Lomachenko lost to Lopez is when I'm like, okay, Canelo's number one. But yeah, Crawford doesn't have the opponents. And a big reason why is because PBC, they froze him out. They freeze him out. When he was there, they made a point to freeze him out. He couldn't fight all these other big names at welterweight. He couldn't fight Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, till later on when he stepped up. Shouts out to Sean Porter. Danny Garcia, your Dennis Ugas, Mikey Garcia, Adrian Broner. All these guys, he couldn't fight because he's with Top Rank, and they don't want to do business with Top Rank. So that's just the business of boxing. And I don't think personally it's fair to criticize or penalize Crawford completely for his lack of accomplishments when, we live in a world where there's nuance and there's a understanding that there's a practicality factor in this, and you can't penalize a guy's resume when he's being froze out by the rest of the division. So I have to give Crawford his credit there. I think from a resume standpoint, his resume has taken a hit because of the politics. And when people look back 10, 15 years, they're going to be like, why didn't Crawford fight all these guys? But I know why. Because I understand the business of boxing. Boxing is a business disguised as a sport. So, yeah, I don't think it's fair to penalize Crawford all the way. I think resume is important, but it's not the only factor when you evaluate resume. So, for me, Terence Crawford's the number one fighter in the world. And unfortunately, he hasn't gotten those big fights to propel him, so where the public knows it. And to be honest, he also has zero swag, so he's not doing himself a favor by getting fans. But hopefully the Spence fight does happen, so Terence Crawford has the opportunity to prove himself as being the best boxer in the world. So Terence Crawford's my number one fighter in the world. If someone said Usyk or Inoue, I would have no problem with that, because of accomplishments. But for me, it's Terence Crawford. So let me know what you think. Who's the number one fighter in the world? If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, and have a great day.